ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of the great master Sri Ramakrishna, written by Shardanandaji Maharaj. We were participating in the spiritual practices of Sri Ramakrishna of the Advaita Sadhana under the able guidance of Sri Totapuri. Shardanandaji Maharaj is describing about the thoughts which are going on in the mind of Totapuri. He, that is Totapuri, however, did not say anything about it to the master and introduced other topics, thinking that the above mentioned impression of the master's mind would very soon vanish when initiated by him. He would begin practicing the disciplines of the path of knowledge. He said that the master would have to give up his sacred thread and tuft of hair on his head before the scriptural initiation into sannyasa. The master hesitated a little and said that he had not the least objection if it could be done privately, but he would by no means be able to do it publicly, as it would deal a terrible blow to the heart of his old grief-stricken mother. The itinerant teacher understood the reason why the master wanted to be initiated privately and said, "Very well, I shall initiate you in private when the auspicious moment comes." Now, very important thing which we have to note is, even during the time of breaking the bondage from the family, even during the Vedanta sadhana where everything is negated, there too we can see Ramakrishna is so much concerned about his mother. He had highest respect towards his biological mother. So these things are to be emulated, or we have to practice these qualities if we are devotees of Sri Ramakrishna. Even otherwise, even if we are not devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, these great qualities are to be inculcated. So the devotion, the reverence, the highest respect to mother, the biological mother, is shown everywhere, not only in our scriptures, not only in all our Hindu activities. We have to practice that greatest ideal which Ganesha represents, that is Matru Bhakti. So he was ready to do anything, but now earlier you can see while practicing so many sadhanas, he was not at all bothered about the people who are looking at him. What are they going to think about him? So all that shame, lajja, fear, everything was given out. Now you can see that he is telling the Guru Totapuri, he would be he would by no means be able to do it publicly, as it would deal a terrible blow to the heart of the old grief-stricken mother. Later, when the auspicious day arrived, Totapuri asked the master to perform the Shraddha and other ceremonies for the satisfaction of the souls of his forefathers. And when those rites were finished, Tota made him offer Pinda according to the scriptural injunctions for the satisfaction of his own soul. Or from the time of being initiated into sannyasa, the aspirant totally renounces the hope of and the right to the attainment of any of the words such as bhuhu, bhuvaha, suvaha, tapaha, mahaha, janaha, satyaloka, and all those things. That is why the scriptures enjoin his offering pinda to himself. After that, he cannot do any work, any karma that is selfish, any karma that will lead him to the enjoyment in this world or any other world. The master submitted himself without reserve to anyone whom he ever accepted as a spiritual teacher. And it is bidding with the absolute faith. Therefore, it is needless to say that he followed to the letter what Totapuri now asked him to do. He performed the Shraddha and other preliminary rites, kept the necessary fast, collected at the Sadhana Kutir near the Panchavati all the articles as instructed by his teacher for the rites connected with the initiation into sannyasa, and waited for the arrival of the auspicious time for the ceremony. When, about 2 hours before daybreak, the auspicious moment of Brahma Muhurta arrived. So, what is this Brahma Muhurta? Early morning, especially from 3:30 onwards or 3 o'clock onwards, up to 6:30 or something like that. It's called Brahma Muhurta. So Muhurta means time, that particular time. If you go to the Panchanga, astrological calculations, there are so many things like yoga, Muhurta. So that good auspicious time every day where you can easily meditate and think of God, where you will have no or you will have very less external attractions. All the other times, your senses, your mind will be rushing here and there. But during this Brahma Muhurta, it's very easy. Morning 3:30 to that 6:30 or so, you can easily concentrate your mind on God. So there will be no distractions. The indriyas will not be, the senses will not be dragging you here and there. Mind also will be very calm and quiet. So it's easy for you to meditate on the Nirakara, Nirguna, Parabrahma. So that is called that particular time early in the morning, 3:30 to 6:30. That area, that time is called Brahma Muhurta. Muhurta means particular time. So now the sannyasa would be given at the time of Brahma Muhurta when about 2 hours before daybreak. 2 hours before daybreak. So here also they have mentioned it. Sunrise is the daybreak. In each country, the sunrise goes on. Every country you can see, the sunrise goes on increasing or decreasing. Just like if you go to Far East, especially Japan, and if you come to Bengal too, the sun rises very early in the winter. Sometimes the sunrise will be at 3:30, 3:45. So they will calculate the time when is the sunrise in that area. So all the dealings, all the auspicious works will be done based on that. So that sunrise accordingly will be going on changing. Maybe every day or maybe once in a week there will be change in the timing of the sunrise or sunset. So exactly they try to do the early morning arati and evening sandhya arati at that time when there is sunrise and sunset in Belur Math. Exactly the time will be calculated according to the Panchanga when there will be the sunrise and the early morning arti will be there. Sometimes we had to rush to the temple at 3:45 for the arati. It goes on up to 4:30. Again, it will come back. So every day there will be change. They will not do that exactly to the minute or the second. So for some 15 days or 20 days, that will be maintained the same time. Then again, they will go on changing. So yearly, some 4 or 5 times or 6 times, there'll be that change in timings according to the sunrise. Evening Arati also will be done accordingly. So daybreak is the sunrise. 2 hours before daybreak or sunrise is Brahma Muhurta. So that goes on varying according to that particular place. Here, if you see in South Africa, you can calculate when the sun rises, the daybreak. So before that, 2 hours before that is Brahma Muhurta. So whichever part of the country you go, 2 hours before the daybreak or sunrise is called Brahma Muhurta. When about 2 hours before the daybreak, the auspicious moment of Brahma Muhurta. So now every day, this Brahma Muhurta, and in the evening, there is the time called Goduli Samaya. What is meant by Goduli Samaya? Evening, when in olden days, it was an agrarian profession everywhere. So most of them were farmers. So everything was agrarian. So they would take the cows for the grazing to different areas, to the forest, and they will eat sumptuous food there, the grass, leaves, and so many other things. And while coming back to the house or the village, so there will be a lot of dust because all the what you call animals like cows, buffaloes, sheep, goats, everything which is bought by the farmers, they will meet on the road. They will be in different areas of the forest. So they will all come back to the road. Then they will all march towards the village. So while they are marching towards the village, because of that walking fast towards the house, there will be the dust. In those days, there was no metal roads or tar roads. It was all muddy roads. So the dust will rise up as they walk fast and come back. So in the evening, you could see while these cows are coming back, there'll be a huge dust storm like thing. It is not a storm, but dust rising up. So that is called Go Dhuli. Dhuli means the dust that has risen up towards the sky because of the walking of so many hundreds or thousands of cows coming towards the village. So that time is called Godhuli Samaya. So to do any good things, any auspicious thing in any particular day, the Brahma Muhurta early in the morning, 2 hours before the sunrise, and in the evening, the Godhuli Samaya, when that cows would come back before it gets dark. All the cows and animals have to come back to their houses. They will be rushing back. So there will be a storm. It's not a storm as such, but there will be this dust coming up. So if you go out to the villages even now, at that particular time, because it is everywhere tar roads, so very less chances of dust rising. But even then, that particular time, that's called Go means cows, Dhuli is the dust, Samaya means the time when the dust rises, when the cows are coming back, just before sunset. So that is called Godhuli Samaya. So these two are very auspicious, evening and early morning, every day. So when about 2 hours before daybreak, the auspicious moment of Brahma Muhurta arrived. The Guru and the disciple met in the hut. In the Panchavati, there was one temporary hutment or temporary shelter, a very simple hut. You know, the hut means there will be some bamboo pillars, the bamboo stick will be placed there, and it will be covered with some either the coconut thing or the coconut leaf walls, and they will add mud to that, or there will be brick wall. Then above that, they will put the paddy, the plants which are dried up because they grow a lot of paddy or any other grass which will be dried up, will be laid on the support in such a way that water doesn't come in or sunlight doesn't come in. So that is called hut. You can find now everywhere people, even rich people, want to have a experience of this hut thatched roof. So even in modern houses, you can see such facilities. They make huts. So now there was one hut, old hut there in Panchoti. So everything was done there. The preliminaries finished. The homa fire was lighted. So they met in that hut, and after performing all the preliminaries, the homa fire, Agni, to do the Agni Karya, because in Havan or Agni, in the Krita Yuga, in the olden days, there was very less image worship or idol worship, because much of the people were at a high state of mind, so they could concentrate on the Nirakara, God without form. And even with to do the God with form, they could do it in their mind. Their minds were at very high state of concentration and strong minds, because that was Krita Yuga, the Satya Yuga. So later on, when the power of the mind concentration became lesser and lesser, so many new things like idol worship, everything was introduced to help the people to grasp the truth, grow strong, and go forward in spiritual life, to get concentration. So it was those days the Agni worship, fire. So there was no temples, there were only this Yaga Shala, or everywhere there will be this Homa Havana. To perform this Homa Havana Agni Karya, there will be that place, fireplace, where they could put the fire and do all their ceremonies or rituals. So Agni was considered to be the carrier of every items they gave, either to the ancestors or to the gods, or different gods and goddesses, or anything. So the Agni is the carrier. That's why they'll put everything. Agni will digest everything and take that. He will take that to the whomever god we want to give, and give it to him. So is the Agni is the Vahaka, the carrier. And in Homa Havan also, if you have seen the mantras, we will invoke that particular god. Suppose we are doing the Homa or Havan of Ramakrishna, then we tell that Sri Ramakrishna Namagne. So Ramakrishna, in the name of this Agni, in the name of Sri Ramakrishna, please come to this place, this fire. Iha agacha, iha agacha, iha tishta, iha tishta, iha sanidehi, iha sanidehi, iha sanirudhyasva, iha sanirudhyasva, iha sammukho bhava, iha sammukho bhava, atra adhishthanam kuru, mama pujang grihanam. So please come here, turn towards me, and sit here firmly, and please accept my worship, whatever I am going to do. So this way the mantras, and we will invoke the Lord in that Agni, and we will offer everything, and we will feel that everything is taken by, not only feel, the Lord will be there. Those are all very powerful mantras. The Lord will come and accept your offerings and services, and pleased, He will give you whatever boons or something like that. So now the preliminaries finished, the Homa fire was lighted, and the woods and the gardens round the Panchavati reverberated. The woods here is the forest or the trees around that Panchavati. It was a thick forest there, lot of trees, dense vegetation. So the woods and the garden, there were also garden which was grown very properly in a very good way. That was a little away. But nearby that hut and in Panchavati, it was all thick vegetation, just like forest. So that forest, the woods, the gardens round the Panchavati reverberated with the sound of the holy and the profound mantras chanted before taking the vow of utter renunciation for God. So they will chant from the Vedas, the Viraja Homa. So it is there in the Upanishads, it's also in the Vedas. So the Viraja Homa, the Viraja mantras will be chanted from the Vedas, and that is with those mantras, the sannyasa will be taken up. So those Vedic mantras were chanted loudly. So those mantras will be were reverberating everywhere. I think here South Africans have very less opportunity to hear the true Vedic mantras because they do not know the deeper aspects of the Vedas. If the Vedic mantras are chanted properly, with proper intonation, it gives rise to wonderful vibrations, and it will purify our body, it will purify our mind, and even the surrounding areas where that mantra is chanted will be purified. So if you can hear that, then you can understand what is the vibration and the reverberation it creates, and how the atmosphere and your mind will be purified. Only when you see all those homa, havan, and other things done in a traditional way, the Vedic method, because here they have forgotten all the mantras, the intonations. I have seen many places, so that intonations and other things are not done properly. That's a different thing. We should not criticize or tell anybody. They have maintained, they have, what do you call, they are doing all these things. That itself is a great thing, coming away from the country. But if you see the original traditional way in which they chant the mantras, when those priests are chanting that together, it creates a wonderful vibration. So here, when Thotapuri and Ramakrishna, who are there, were chanting those Vedic mantras, the whole woods and the garden around the Panchavati reverberated with the sound of the holy and the profound mantras chanted before taking the vow of utter renunciation for God. The vow that has come down to an unbroken line from the Guru to the disciple from the beginning of the time till today, and has maintained India as the foremost country in the field of Brahman realization. Brahman is the name for God in his formless and attributeless aspect. So that is called Nirakara Nirguna Parabrahman. So that is a word given in the Vedas for God in his Nirakara Nirguna, formless and attributeless. That way is called Nirakara Nirguna Parabrahman. When it takes the same Lord who is formless, attributeless, take forms and attributes, he becomes Sakara Saguna Parabrahma. The same Lord taking different forms and different attributes, it is called Sakara Saguna Parabrahma. So whenever the word Brahman, whenever the word Parabrahma is used, so it is to be taken as from here onwards or wherever in Upanishad, the word Parabrahman. Brahman means the biggest. Bhuma. Para means highest. Parabrahman means the biggest and the highest aspect of God. That's called Nirakara Nirguna Parabrahma, beyond everything. So when that takes the form and the attributes, that's called Sakara Saguna Parabrahma. So any times now the word Brahman or Parabrahma is used, we have to connect that to this attributeless, formless God. So now here Sharadanandaji is making a beautiful statement. What is that? Now they are taking, the Guru Thotapuri is giving the vow. What vow? The vrata. What kind of vrata? Vow of utter renunciation for God. Utter renunciation. Giving up everything that is unreal without any desire for the sake of realizing the real, the true, the eternal, that is God. So that particular mantras, the Viraja mantras, which are meant for giving up everything for the sake of God. So that was chanted before taking the vow of utter renunciation for God. The vow that has come down in an unbroken line from the Guru to the disciple from the beginning of the time till today. So that's why those Vedas are called Shrutis. The highest scriptures in Hinduism is called Shruti. Then it will be Smriti. Then it is Purana. Then it is Agama. Like that, it is broken down. It comes as it become lower and lower. The scriptures are broken down. The highest form of the scriptures are Shruti. Why is that name Shruti given? Because from time immemorial, from the Satyuga, maybe thousands or 50,000 or 60,000 years back, so the rishis, whatever the truths they used to get, the mantras and the other things would be not recorded in books. Maybe that tradition was not there. People had a lot of memory. So the guru would utter those mantras and the disciples would hear them and then they too would repeat and utter that. So, because of that practice, there are so many ways by which the mantras told by the guru, the practice the disciple makes it. There are so many methods. In Vedapata chanting, there is the Ghanapata, there is the Jatapata, like that. The words will be broken up and they will go back, they will come forward, go one word a little forward, then again come back, go to the earlier word. There are so many varieties of way of doing that. Rules and regulations will be there accordingly. The intonations, everything will go on. They will break it. So chant it again and again. Go back, come forward, again go back, go forward, 2, 3 steps like that. They will be chanting and learning. So every word without any mistakes will be in your memory. So that was the way by which the Vedic mantras were taught by the Guru to the disciple. So it went on from the teacher to the disciple in that way. So it would increase their memory and everything would be in their memory, in their brain. So there was no need of books at all. Everything is there in their memory. So there were books, there were written so many other things, but the Vedic mantras, the Shruti, were not recorded. Only recently, all those recently in the sense, maybe some 400, 500 years earlier, or even a little earlier, they started writing those things on the leaf pages. They were done out of some leaves or some special bark of the tree, the bhoja tree. So they used to make and they used to etch it. It was not writing, they started etching. Then paper came, they started writing with the help of the feather of the peacock. So they used to dip it in the ink and write it. Then, like that, it went on improving. Nowadays, the writing also has gone. Everything is typing and typing. So you'll be doing on the computer. The keypad has come, so you'll be typing on it. But then it was just the mantras were repeated in such a way, the different methods were devised. The disciple would hear them, repeat it, and he would memorize. Everything was in their brain. So that system by which the knowledge is transferred from the guru, from the teacher to the disciple, that those scriptures, the Vedas, they are called Shruti. Shruti means which has come down from hearing, from the words of the guru to the hearing of the disciple. So that's why it gets the name Shruti. Shruti means which is heard. So now, in that way, here Ramakrishna and Totapuri, they are in that hut. They have finished all the preliminaries. So the mantras, the Vedic mantras, profound, holy mantras were chanted before taking the vow of the renunciation of vow of the utter renunciation for God. Viraja mantras were chanted for giving up everything to realize God. The vow that has come down in an unbroken line. So it has come from the tradition of guru to disciple and that disciple to the next unbroken chain. So it has come down up till now. Nothing is changed. Everything is intact, perfect. As it was chanted some 50, 60,000 years back. So all that mantras, as it is chanted, the same way they do the Homa Havan. So it is maintained. So that's why Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling the vow that has come down in an unbroken line from the Guru to the disciple from the beginning of time, from the beginning of the time, when the creation started and the rishis started discovering. It is not something newly found. It is already all these truths are there. Just like gravity is always there. Gravity was not waiting for Newton to find it out. It was already there. Only Newton, the falling of the apple, gave the suggestion and the truth was discovered, opened up. It was already there. Likewise, these truths were discovered when the because ours is not linear time. Ours, in our tradition, it is cyclic, is creation, sustenance, and then destruction is going on from time immemorial. It is cyclic. It is not linear. In the Western concept and the Abrahamic religions, it is linear. It will end. One fine day there will be doomsday. The Lord will come on the day of judgment, and he will, with his judgment, see all the bad people will be put to permanent hell, and all the good people will be sent to permanent heaven. So that's all. There ends the matter. So this is not the case with India, its culture, and Hinduism. Yeah, the time is cyclic. So that Krita Yuga, 4 yugas, then Dwapar Yuga, then the Treta. First is after Krita Yuga, it is Treta Yuga, then Dwapar Yuga, then the Kali Yuga. So 430 million years is that Chatur Yuga, 4 yugas. Kali Yuga is 16,000 years. So all that will is going on from time immemorial. So many times this Srishti Sthiti Pralaya has happened again and again. The same thing is being repeated. It's cyclic. I sitting here in front of this computer and talking about this great master, and all of you who are sitting and hearing this in different places. Now this has happened. My explaining this, the photo behind Ramakrishna's photo here, Belur Math photo, this room, everything, this arrangement, the couch which I am sitting here, everything has happened millions and millions of times earlier. It will happen millions and billions of times again. So that is, it is cyclic. Only maybe the soul, the Atman which is now sitting here and the Atman which is sitting in your bodies may go on differing. It may change, but it is happening from time immemorial. So here also you can see from the time of the creation, time, long time, Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, beginning of the time till today, and has maintained India as the foremost country in the field of Brahman realization. God, in his original form, the attributeless, the formless aspect, so the realization of the highest. So in that field, India has maintained its foremost position, the country, foremost country in the field of Brahman realization. Not only Brahman realization, God realization and spirituality, many other things, science, mathematics, everything, music, all the fine arts, everything, India was very popular. So many invaders came to destroy India so many times. But again, just like the phoenix, it has risen from the dust and fought back and it has become strong. No force on this earth could destroy this civilization. It is still coming up. I will just give you an example. When our present MP in the BJP, that is Subramania Swamy, was teaching in the Harvard University in America as an economist. At that time, one Arabian student asked him, the Christian, "Sir, I have a question. What is that?" The Arabians, when they found out their new religion called Islam, so they went to the next, away from Arabia, there is the next civilization, Persia, that is present day Iran. It was the oldest civilization, one of the old civilization. And we captured it, and within 15 years, the whole civilization, older civilization was demolished and we converted into an Islamic country. Then another great civilization, the Babylonian, now present day Iraq, Babylonian civilization. We took over. The whole civilization was destroyed. It was converted into Islam just within 30 or 40 years. Then we went to another old civilization, the Jewish civilization, Jews, Yahudis, and the Jordan, the Palestine, so many other places were conquered. Only a small bit, the Bethlehem and now present Israel, was left. Everything was converted. We took over within 20, 30 years. It was ours. Then we went to another old civilization, Egyptian civilization, and we conquered it and took over within 7 or 8 years. It was ours. Until now it is there. So many civilization. The Assyrian civilization was also taken over. Now the present day Syria was another civilization, Assyrian civilization that was taken over. But matter of very few days, then we went to Europe. So much part of Europe, the Turkey and so many other part of Europe was taken over within very less period. Even now, Turkey was a part of Europe, and many other places were a part of Europe, and it was taken over by our Arabian invaders, and we came to India. We tried and tried for 600 years to capture. For 600 years, here within 20, 30 years, it was ours. We ruled, we captured, we destroyed, we almost demolished their civilization, burned so many universities, crumbled, the temples were made to crumble. We killed billions and billions of people there. But even after rule of 600 years, we couldn't convert India and its civilization, Hinduism. Still, even after breaking the country, Pakistan and Bangladesh, still 80% Hindus survived. The Indian civilization, Hindu civilization is still surviving. So the question was, what is the secret in your religion that has withstood all the onslaught? The Mongols came, the Dutch came, the British came, the Portuguese came, all the other countries, the Maya civilization was eradicated by the Spanish Armada. The Portuguese, they were so ruthless. Either you can choose between the sword and the Bible. They decimated their civilization, the Maya civilization, Inca civilization, the Red Indians were completely taken off from the map. Only little small tidbits are there. So they all got converted. Even they forgot their languages. The European languages are still being spoken. If you go to Brazil, it is Portuguese. If you go to other places, it is Spanish. So like that, whichever country you go, it may be Dutch. So they all came to India too. They tried to conquer. The Mongols came. Everybody came. They ruled for some times. But the British also ruled, but nothing could happen. Again, our Indian civilization, the Hindu civilization, came back, becoming stronger and stronger. As Swami Vivekananda predicts, it will reach greater heights than what it had reached in the earlier Vedic period. It will reach much more greater heights. Only all of us, you have to work hard. We should not wait for some avatar Purusha to come, another avatar Purusha to come. What has happened to us? Why has God given us this body, strength, mind, intellect? Every one of us have to contribute, do something for the religion. For our religion, that is like our mother. So that is what we should not wait for just one Prime Minister of India to do the things only he should do for the country, when we can do something. Whatever way, you need not go take a sword or a gun and fight. You can contribute, learning Hinduism, teaching it to others. The great tenets, the great good teachings, the Upanishad, everything can be learned and given to the people. So the service to Hinduism is not only taking some guns and go on fighting like revolutionaries. So many ways you can contribute. So each of us in our own way can contribute for this great civilization. So likewise, it has withstood the onslaught of so many attacks. So now here, that's why Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, from the beginning of time till today, it has maintained, India, or Hindu civilization has maintained as the foremost country in the field of Brahman realization, the sensitive and affectionate bosom of the Bhagirathi of holy waters, Bhagirathi, Ganga, because Bhagirata, he brought down to save his ancestors, the sons of Sagara, 60,000 sons of Sagara. So Bhagirata did so much of austerity to bring down Mother Ganga from the celestial sphere to earth. So that's why the name is given to Ganga. Another name to Ganga is Bhagirathi. So many names are there to that. Mandakini, Bhagirathi, Janhavi. So Ganga has so many names. One of them is Bhagirathi. So the sensitive and affectionate bosom of Bhagirathi, of holy waters, vibrating with the delightful touch of the sound, felt the extraordinary infusion of a new life. You can see when the Ganga is flowing, that is called as Hooghly there. That because of the district Hooghly, that area where that Ganga flows is called Hooghly. Exactly, it is nothing but Ganga. Ganga is called because of the district Hooghly, they call it as Hooghly River. Whatever, let us not go to that. This is Ganga. So while Ganga is flowing down from the north towards that sea, on the right side of the bank is Dakshineshwar. Still you go forward, downwards, to the left side is the Belur Math. On the side of the Hooghly. On the right side is the Calcutta. So now this Dakshineshwar was situated the right side of going towards the sea, the Ganga flowing towards the sea. On the right side was situated this Dakshineshwar. That's why here Shardananda Jimarji is also explaining about the holy waters vibrating with the delightful touch of that sound, the Vedic mantras, felt the extraordinary infusion of a new life. Now she flowed dancing with joy, bearing as it were through her murmurs to all quarters of the message, to all quarters, the message that after the lapse of so many ages, a true sadhaka of India was once again undertaking the vow of total renunciation for the good of the many of this country and of the world at large. So now Swayam, Lord Gadadhara Vishnu, Narayana himself has come down, taken the human form, and he is taking this sannyasa, the highest renunciation to realize God, not for his personal gain, his liberation or mukti, freedom, but for the wellness and good of the society, not only of the Hindu civilization, but for the world at large. So because these are all universal truths, it can't be limited to only geographical India and Hinduism, because these are all universal truths. It has to be going to everybody. So that is the speciality of our Hindu civilization and Hindu religion. It's universal in its theme. So the sensitive and affectionate bosom of the Bhagirathi of holy waters, vibrating with the delightful touch of the sound, felt the extraordinary infusion of a new life. She flowed dancing with joy. Can you imagine? Mother Ganga will be so happy. What is Mother? Why is she pure? Because she has washed the feet of Hari as Vamana avatar. And she has touched the head of Lord Shiva. That's why she is so pure. So now, how happy she will be, because Lord Narayana himself has come, is living on the bank of this river, and now he's taking the highest, the topmost vow of renunciation on this bank. That's why Mother Ganga is so happy. She's dancing. The sensitive and affectionate bosom of Bhagirathi of holy waters, vibrating with the delightful touch of that sound, felt the extraordinary infusion of a new life. She flowed dancing with joy, bearing as it were through her murmurs to all quarters the message that after the lapse of ages, a true sadhaka of India was once again undertaking the vow of total renunciation for the good of the many of this country and of the world at large. The Guru was now ready to recite. The mantras and the disciple to repeat them carefully and to offer oblations to the lighted fire. The prayer mantras were first uttered. Now, all that Viraja mantra meant for the sannyasa were uttered by Totapuri, and it was repeated by Sri Ramakrishna to take that vows. And what are the now, because those mantras, it is recorded from Bangalore Ashrama, Taittiriya Mahanarayana Upanishad, it is called. This Viraja Homa comes in that particular Upanishad. It is called Taittiriya Mahanarayana Upanishad. So in that we get this Viraja mantras. So it has been audio taped by great scholars of Bangalore in Karnataka. They are called Challakere brothers. So they are very experts. They know all these mantras, so many mantras. Just like olden days rishis, they can chant it, all the mantras from memory. They've got it by heart. They have learnt it traditionally in this way. Those two brothers, with the help of the ashrama, financial support of the ashrama, we recorded them in the studio, and the Taittiriya Mahanarayana Upanishad is there. If possible, God permitting, then I can put those mantras of the Viraja Homa, if possible, tomorrow. God willing, I will try to make that particular Viraja Homa mantras to be chanted by those Chalakara brothers, which is there tomorrow in the short thing we can make to be chanted, putting on that tape recorder if the technology permits and everything. I will try. So now here, the Guru has to give the mantra and the disciple has to receive it. So here, Shardanandaji Maharaj, if I go on chanting those mantras, it will take a long time. So that's why the meaning of the mantra has been given. For us, who know, suppose we do not know Sanskrit and we do not know the meaning, even the chanting itself will create such a good, beautiful vibration. You can feel it. Try to put that particular chanting. But now Shardanandaji Maharaj is giving the essence of it, meaning of those things in English. Shardanandaji has given that in Bengali language, and our another great realized soul, Swami Jagadanandaji Maharaj, is translating it into English. May the truth of the Supreme Brahman reach me. May the truth of the Supreme Brahman reach me. May the reality having the characteristics of supreme bliss, highest Ananda, Ananta Ananda, infinite bliss. May the reality having the characteristics of supreme bliss reach me. May the indivisible, Akhanda. Akhanda means it cannot be, Khanda means piece, break it into piece. Akhanda means it cannot be broken. Homogeneous. May that indivisible, Akhanda, homogeneous, sweet reality of Brahman. Why that sweet reality, the highest joy, infinite bliss, whatever joy, whatever pleasure we have in this world is a very, very minuscule, paltry portion, very small, 0.00001% of that infinite joy. The joy of the God is only found through this indriyas or senses, in these worldly things. Whatever is nothing but that joy only coming through the smaller things here. Very, very small compared to that. That's why the joy of Parabrahman, the happiness you get, is told to be as the supreme bliss. And another thing, may that indivisible, homogeneous, sweet reality, whatever sweetness you see, that the great beauty of the nature, everything is a very small part of that infinite Parabrahma. That's why that sweet reality of Brahman manifests itself in me. It is already there in you, in every one of us. That highest, infinite, homogeneous, akhanda, satchit, ananda, infinite existence, absolute, infinite knowledge, consciousness, absolute, infinite joy, absolute. It's already there within you, within me, everybody. So that's why the word manifest is there. It's covered by the layer of ignorance, avidya. Because of desire, so many desire to see these paltry things is covered. So let it manifest. It is already there within you. Nothing new. It's your birthright. So here the word manifest itself in me. O Supreme Self, Paramatman, O Supreme Self, who art eternally coexistent with thy power of revealing the Brahman consciousness of all thy children, devas, human beings, and others to thee. May I, thy child, the servant, be an special object of compassion. Out of your compassion, please manifest that joy of yours, that knowledge, the consciousness of yours, manifest that in me. So that is a prayer done to that Parabrahma Swarupa. So thy child, the servant, be an special object of your compassion. O great Lord, the destroyer of the evil dream of the worlds. This dream, this world is nothing but a dream state compared to that higher state of realization. So, O great Lord, the destroyer of the evil dream of this world. Now you can understand why Lord Shiva is called the destroyer. Brahma is the creator, Lord Vishnu is the sustainer, maintainer, and why Shiva is called the destroyer. Destroyer means not destroy all these building and other things. No. He destroys the ignorance. So that's why you can see, O great Lord, the destroyer of the evil. So Lord Shiva is the destroyer of the evil, destroyer of the ignorance, avidya, maya. So destroyer of the evil dreams of the worlds. Destroy all my evil dreams, all these desires, all these sufferings, everything is just evil dream. Destroy all my evil dreams. The perception of duality. Because I want to enjoy this world, I create this duality to enjoy this world. When only Lord exists, nothing but Lord. I am that Lord. So destroy this perception of duality. O Supreme Self, I offer as oblations my vital forces, prana. What shall I offer? What do I have in me? The prana, vital forces, all the prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, the energies in my body, in my mind, everything, the thought force, the blood flowing, the heart beating, everything is because of the force, physical forces which are there. I offer everything as oblation. O great Lord, the destroyer of the evil dream of the birds, destroy all my evil dreams. The perception of duality, O Supreme Self, Paramatman, I offer as oblations. What do I offer as oblation? Some coconut, some banana, some rice, and ghee? No. I offer as oblation my vital forces, prana, and controlling my senses. I set my mind, indriya nigraha, controlling my senses. I set my mind on thee alone. I concentrate, I set my mind on thee alone. So, what is that word? I set my mind. So, the word sannyasa, I've explained, comes from the root word nyas, samyak nyasa. Samyak means very nicely, very in a very special way. That's called samyak. So nyasa comes from the root word nyas. So it has two meaning. Nyas means nyas kshipane, to throw away, to give up. And another meaning is to nicely place at one place. That is called consecration. To consecrate it. Nyasa is in pujas you will be having that nyasa, karanyasa, anganyasa. So many nyasas will be there. Antar matruka nyasa. So many nyasa comes from that. Nicely placing consecration. First of all, you cannot place two things at the same time at the same place. You cannot place two things at the same time and the same place. The basic of science. So our mind now, which is placed in all these worldly enjoyments, paltry things, the desires, which is creating all these small pleasures and big pain, so much of suffering. So that thing is to be nicely removed. And then I have to place my mind nicely. That is consecration. Placing nicely. That is what now Shardananda Maharaj is telling here. What is that? I set my mind on thee. Samyak Nyasa. Nicely I consecrate, place my mind. I set my mind on thee only, nothing else. I set my mind on thee alone, O shining one. Deva means the light is self-luminous. Light will be, it doesn't need any light from outside source. It's self-luminous. Even the sun, even the stars, they, the Upanishad tells, they give the light, they burn because of the Parabrahman, the Lord. So he's the one giver of light to everything. Even the stars, they give us the light from him, they borrow it from him. That's why he's self-luminous, the Lord. You can see the mantra telling him as, O Supreme Self, the Paramatman, I set my mind on thee alone, O Shining One, Deva, who directest every being. All the beings are directed by you alone to reach you. You are directing everything. Who directest every being. Remove from me all blemishes. Remove from me all blemishes that are obstacle to right knowledge, and ordain that the knowledge of reality, free from absurdities and contrarieties, arise in me. May all the things of the world, the sun, the air, the cool, pure water of the rivers, grains like barley and wheat, which was used at that time, barley and wheat, trees, etc., ordained by thee, illumine and help me to attain the knowledge of truth. Thou art manifest in the world, O Brahman, as various forms with a special potency. So these are all the meanings of the mantras of the Viraja Homa. So now I will explain that mantra tomorrow. If I go on explaining that's long mantras, so it will become too much for you. So we will go to the next step and come tomorrow, and I will explain that again tomorrow. So that some of the mantras will end with Swaha. So may my mind, speech, body, actions be purified, free from the blemishes produced by Rajoguna. May I, by virtue of offering oblations, attain the nature of the light of consciousness itself. Swaha. O person of red eyes, dwelling in the body of the fire and capable of destroying the obstacles to the attainment of the knowledge, do thou wake up. O fulfiller of desires, ordain that all obstacles to my attainment of knowledge be destroyed, and the knowledge heard from the lips of the Guru arise in me. May everything that is in me be completely purified, freed from the blemishes produced by Rajoguna. May I, by virtue of offering oblation, attain the nature of the light of consciousness itself. Swaha. That is all the mantras. It's going on. The purport of Trisuparna mantra and other things, and the Rajo Viraja Homa is all being given here. Now, Totapuri. Many oblations like this were thus offered, and the Homa was brought to an end by the disciple, saying, I give up from now. I give up from this moment the desire for attaining the Bhuhu, the enjoyment of this world, Bhuhu, and all other worlds, Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Tapaha, all the 14 worlds, whatever enjoyment is there, I'm going to give up. I assure all beings of the universe in this, from the microorganisms to everything, I assure all beings of the universe of freedom, Abhayam Sarvabhuteshu, freedom from fear on account of me. So Ahimsa Vrata, that I will not harm any living beings in whatever form. So that vow has to be taken. Ahimsa Paramo Dharma. So what is that vow there in the Sanskrit? It has been translated to English. I assure the person who is going to take sannyasa have to take this vow. All beings of the universe, irrespective of what they are, all beings of the universe, of freedom from fear. I give them abhaya, no fear from me. I will not harm anybody on account of me. He then offered an oblation, sacred thread, the Yagnopavita or Janevu, and the tuft shikha of hair on his head according to the scriptural injunctions, indicating that here afterwards he will not do any rituals which will give him the worldly things. So, to give up all the desires, whatever the worldly enjoyments would be got by doing all these rituals, I'm going to give up. So, after that, sannyasi cannot perform any rituals which will give him the worldly pleasures. He can do only for the sake of the good of the world. He can do only the havan or homa or puja to please the Lord only, not for any personal gains. Kamya karma, to fulfill some desires for progeny, for the good wife, for the good husband, or for the good house or wealth or enjoyments of this world or any other world. So he cannot take up anymore. That's why, as an indication, he cuts his shikha and janevu, dips it in ghee, and offer it in, as an oblation in the fire, viraja homa. So then, putting on the pair of kaupinas and ochre cloth. So some among us say that Totapati gave the name. Some people tell that Ramakrishna was given, earlier his name was Gadadhara Chattopadhyaya. So the name, some people tell that the name Ramakrishna was given by Totapuri during the time of sannyasa. Some among us say that Totapuri gave the name Ramakrishna to the master when he initiated him into sannyasa. Others say that Mathuranath, who was a great devotee of the master and served him wholeheartedly, called him first by that name. The first opinion seems to us to be reasonable. Whatever, some say that Totapuri gave this name Ramakrishna because his name was Gadadhara Chattopadhyaya. So during the sannyasa, they changed the name, they give a new name, the guru will be giving that name. So just like earlier, the Brahmacharya name given to me was Sattva Chaitanya. Then during sannyasa, when the mantra is given, the guru gave me, Revered Bhuteshanandaji Maharaj gave me the name Swatma Ramananda. So now, Totapuri, a knower of Brahman, now encouraged the master to practice the contemplation of not this, not this. Neti Neti Marga. Reject all that is unreal and accept only the reality. So that path by which you will go to reach this Parabrahma Nirakara Nirguna, that is called the practice of contemplation of not this, not this. Na iti, na iti. Reject everything that is not God. As well, a well-known disciple in the Vedanta and remain identified with Brahman itself. He said to the master, Brahman, the highest Godhead, the one substance which alone is eternally pure, eternally awakened, unlimited by time, space, and causation, is absolutely real. Through the influence of Maya, which makes the impossible possible, agatana ghatana ghatiyasi. Ghatiyasi is the Maya description for Maya. So Maya, which makes the impossible possible, that is, what is impossible? The Lord Parabrahma Swarupa will be covered completely by this ego and nescience or avidya. And we will be made, we are of the stature of more than billions and billions of suns put together. So much of strength is there in us, infinite strength. So we will be made to think that we are very ordinary fools and ordinary human beings who are powerless without anything. We can't do, see, all, everybody, they will start with the word before speaking, no. They will start with no. No, that is not like that. No, no, that is so, all negative tendencies. Yes, it is possible. I can do everything. The positive tendencies, you have that infinite strength in you. The Maya makes us forget our real nature. Though we are infinite, we have infinite strength in us, infinite joy. So the Maya will cover everything by avidya. So that which is impossible will be made possible by that Maya. So we are made to think that we are very ordinary fools, very ordinary human beings, without anything, without power, without knowledge. I can't do this. I will not do this. So that will be the negative tendencies created by this Maya, though we are that infinite beings, infinite strength is within us. So here that is also told through the influence of the Maya, which makes the impossible possible. It seems that it is divided into names and forms. All this one Parabrahma will be made to divide into names and forms. Time, space, causation, everything is caused by this Maya. Brahman is never really so divided. The Lord is never divided. Or at the time of Samadhi, not even an iota, so to say, of time and space and name and form produced by Maya is perceived. Whatever, therefore, is within the bounds of name and form can never be absolutely real. Give up this unreal world of name and form. Break the firm cage of name and form with the overpowering strength of a lion and come out of it. Dive deep into the reality of the self existing in yourself. Be one with it with the help of samadhi. You will then see the universe consisting of name and form vanish, as it were, into the void. You will see the consciousness of the little I merge in that of the immense I, where it ceases to function, and you will have the immediate knowledge of the indivisible existence, knowledge, bliss, Satchit Ananda, as yourself. The consciousness with the help of which a person sees another, knows another, or hears another is little or limited. Whatever is limited is worthless, for the supreme bliss is not there. For the knowledge established in which a person becomes devoid of the consciousness that one is seeing another, knowing another, and hearing another is Bhuma, the biggest, the immense, or the unlimited. With the help of that knowledge, one gets identified with the supreme bliss, the immense and unlimited consciousness, who is the knower in all beings and whose light reveals everything. How can it be known by the limited mind and intellect? How can the knower at all be known? Now, telling all these things, explaining it to Sri Ramakrishna, all these things about the non dualism, telling about that Parabrahma Swarupa, he tried to impress him. Totapari tried to make the master attain Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Ramakrishna was always in Samadhi. But this is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there will be nothing. No subject, no object, becoming one with Parabrahma Swarupa, no form, no name. Totapari tried to make the master attain Samadhi on that day with the help of various arguments and conclusive quotations from the scriptures. We were informed by the master that Tota strove his best on that occasion to put him immediately into that state of non dual consciousness, to which he himself had attained through lifelong sadhana. Todapri had attained that, himself attained that through his 40 years of sadhana, lifelong sadhana. After initiating me, Sri Ramakrishna is himself telling, after initiating me into the sannyasa, said the master, the naked one, Totapuri, is addressed by Sri Ramakrishna as Nangta. Nangta means naked one. The naked one taught me many dicta conveying the conclusion of the Vedanta, that is the Mahavakyas, and merge it in the meditation of the self. But it so happened that when I sat for meditation, I could by no means make my mind go beyond the bounds of name and form. All form easily from all other things. So I could by no means make my mind go beyond the bounds of the name and form and cease functioning. The mind withdrew itself easily from all other things. But as soon as it did so, the intimately familiar form of the universal Mother Kali consisting of the effulgence of pure consciousness, appeared before it as a living presence and made me quite oblivious of the renunciation of the name and form of all description. So I couldn't go beyond Mother Kali. The form, the consciousness, the name, the effulgent form of Divine Mother would come and obstruct me. It would not allow me to go beyond that. So the mind could withdraw from everything. Ramakrishna himself is telling that his mind withdrew itself easily from all other things. But as soon as he did so, the intimately, because he had so much of devotion to that Divine Mother, the intimately familiar form of the universal Mother Kali, consisting of the effulgence of pure consciousness, appeared before it as a living presence and made me quite oblivious of the renunciation of the names and forms of all descriptions. When I listened to the conclusive dicta and sat for meditation, this happened over and over again. Each time I took the words of my Guru Totapuri and sat for meditation to merge myself into that formless, attributeless Parabrahman. Each time that form of Divine Mother with name and form and that effulgence, pure consciousness start coming to my mind. I couldn't go beyond that. Now, when I listened to the conclusive dicta and sat for meditation, this happened over and over again. Almost despairing of the attainment of the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I then opened my eyes because I tried many times. I opened my eyes and said to the naked one, that is Totapuri, no, it cannot be done. I cannot remove the Divine Mother from my mind. I cannot merge it in the formless. I cannot merge it in the attributeless. Each time I tried, all other things vanishes, but that beautiful form of Divine Mother comes. I cannot go beyond that. I then opened my eyes and said to the naked one, to my Guru, Totapuri, no, it cannot be done. I cannot make the mind free from functioning and force it to dive into the self, scolding me severely. Totapuri now got a little upset. He scolding me severely. The naked one said very excitedly, what? It cannot be done? What nonsense! He then looked about in the hut and finding a broken piece of glass nearby, took it in his hand and forcibly pierced my forehead with its needle-like pointed end between the eyebrows and said, collect the mind here, concentrate the mind here at this point. With a firm determination, now with the instruction of the Guru, I sat for meditation again. And as soon as the holy form of Divine Mother appeared now, as soon as the holy form of the Divine Mother appeared now before the mind, as previously, I looked upon knowledge as a sword. The sword, like a big knife. I looked upon the knowledge itself as a sword and cut the form mentally into two with the sword of knowledge. There remained then no function in the mind. There remained then no function in the mind. The mind transcended quickly the realm of names and forms, making me merge in that formless, attributeless samadhi. No I, no you, nothing, everything vanished. So there remained then no function in the mind, everything vanished, which transcended quickly the realm of names and forms. No names, no forms, everything vanished, making me merge in that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the highest. Totapuri remained sitting for a long time beside the master, who entered into that highest state of yoga, the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, in the manner mentioned above. Then coming out of the hut silently, he locked the door up lest someone should enter the hut without his knowledge and disturb Sri Ramakrishna in deep Samadhi. He took his seat under the Panchavati not far away from the hut and was awaiting the master's call to open the door. He thought that he will come down from Samadhi. He will be there for some time and come down from Samadhi. He was waiting outside, guarding that hut. Now, hours passed, days passed. That day passed into night. Slowly and calmly, days rolled on. At the end of 3 days, when Totapuri did not still hear the master's call, was submerged in Samadhi in Parabrahma Swarupa, he couldn't hear anything from master. When Totapuri did not hear the master's call, he was filled with curiosity and astonishment. Totapuri himself was astonished and left his seat to open the door. With a view to knowing the condition of his disciple, he entered the hut and saw that the master was sitting in the same posture in which he had left him, and that there was not the slightest function of the vital forces in his body. Because in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, your breathing stops, your heartbeat stops, everything, all the vital forces will stop functioning. Nothing, the mind itself doesn't function. When the mind, then the slave of the mind, the brain, everything stops. Where is the question of your heartbeat and other things, blood flow? So in Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, everything stops because you have lost the ego. When you have lost the ego, the owner of this body, now whom will these things function for? The owner itself has left, and the owner himself has gone out, is not there, the ego is not there. What will this everything vitals functions for? So during that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, breathing, heartbeat, BP, everything stops. In that state, no functioning of the mind, no functioning of the vital organs. Ramakrishna is staying in that state for 3 days and 3 nights. He was there as he had left him there. With a view to knowing the condition of his disciple, he entered the hut and saw that the master was sitting in the same posture in which he had left him, and that there was not the slightest function of the vital forces in his body. His face, however, was calm and serene and full of effulgence. His face was calm, even though there was no vitals, nothing of the mind, no heartbeat. So, in spite of that, Ramakrishna was sitting in the same posture in which Totapuri had left him, and that there was not the slightest function of the vital forces in his body, but his face, however, was calm and serene and full of effulgence. Light was coming out of his body and face. He understood that the disciple was completely dead to the external world, and that his mind merged in Brahman was calm and motionless like an unflickering lamp in the windless place. Being versed in the mystery of Samadhi, he was expert in all those Samadhi. Being versed in the mystery of Samadhi, now Totapuri, astounded and exclaimed, he started shouting at the peak of the voice within himself, "Oh, wonderful! How can I believe my eyes? What a wonderful thing! How can I believe my eyes? Has this great soul, has this great soul actually realized in a day? Has this great soul realized, actually realized in a day what I could experience only at the result of 40 years of austere sadhana? This great soul has attained it just in one day or few hours. What a wonderful thing. How can I believe my eyes? Has this great soul actually realized in a day what I could experience only at the result, as a result of 40 years of austere sadhana? Filled with this doubt, Totapuri applied his mind to the examination of the state of the master. So Totapuri scrutinized. He wanted to test minutely all the signs manifested in the disciple's body. He examined especially whether his heart was beating and whether there was the least sign of breathing in him. He touched repeatedly the disciple's body, which was in a steady posture, like a piece of wood, like a piece of stump, firm and fixed, sthanu. But there was no change or modification. No way. No. Was there any return to normal consciousness? No. Beside himself with joy and astonishment, the Guru Totapuri, he cried out, "O divine Maya, O divine Maya, it is indeed Samadhi, the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The ultimate result attained through the path of knowledge spoken of is in the Vedanta. Ah, how very strange the Maya of the divine is. How could this person attain this highest state in just a day or few hours?" Totapuri then understood the process of bringing. Totapuri then undertook. Now he wanted to bring down. Otherwise, that great soul will give up the body. In that merging of that Parabrahma Swarupa, everything is not lost. So then Totapuri undertook the process of bringing the disciple back to consciousness of the external world. Profound sounds of the mantra by repeating that Hari Om, started repeating that loudly, because by the uttering of that mantra, the mind which is merged in that Parabrahma Swarupa will come down. So he started uttering that aloud, Hari Om, Hari Om. Profound sounds of the mantra Hari Om filled the land, water and sky of the Panchavati. Totapuri was shouting at the peak of the voice, Hari Om, to bring down Ramakrishna's mind to normal consciousness, to the external consciousness. We have described in another place how, attracted by the love of his disciple and desirous of making him firmly established in the Nirvikalpa plane of consciousness, Sri Totapuri spent here day after day, month after month, and how, with the help of the master, he had his own special life made complete in all respects. We refrain, therefore, from repeating all that here. Having lived continuously at Dakshineshwar for 11 months, Totapuri started for the northwestern part of the country. There arose immediately after this event a strong determination in the master's mind to remain in unbroken samadhi, in the non-dual plane of consciousness. We have told now, after coming down from this plane of conscious, from that supreme samadhi, merged in that supreme Parabrahman, formless, attributeless Brahman, Totapuri succeeded to bring him down to the normal plane. After that, Totapuri left. The other details are given in another place by Shardanandaji Maharaj. Now, having continuously lived at Dakshineshwar for 11 months, Totapuri started for the northwestern part of the country. There arose immediately after that, in the mind of Sri Ramakrishna, there arose immediately after this event a strong determination in the master's mind to remain in unbroken samadhi. So he wanted to stay in unbroken samadhi. So that desire arose in the master's mind in the non-dual plane of consciousness. We have told the reader elsewhere how he carried into practice the resolve, how Sri Ramakrishna could remain continuously for 6 months, in that state, high plane of non-duality, where even the Adhikarikas, who are only a little lower than the incarnation of God, cannot dwell for a long time, not to speak of the ordinary sadhakas. The Adhikarika Purushas, the gods, different gods and goddesses, who have been given so many adhikara, the power to rule this world, even they cannot stay for such a long time in samadhi. They can stay only for a few hours or minutes. But this great soul, Sri Ramakrishna, we have told elsewhere how Sri Ramakrishna carried into practice that resolve, how he could remain continuously for 6 months in that high plane of non-duality where even the Adhikarikas, who are only a little lower than the incarnation of God, cannot dwell for a long time, not to speak of the ordinary sadhakas. The Jivakotis, ordinary sadhakas like us, can't even think of it. And how at that time a monk arrived at the Kali temple, and how coming to know that humanity was to be greatly benefited in the future through the master's survival, through Ramakrishna's survival, that sadhu, that monk lived there for 6 months, taking care of his body, Sri Ramakrishna's body, and saved his life by various means. If anybody, ordinary person, merges or stays in samadhi for more than 21 days, the body will drop off like a dry leaf because it doesn't want to come back. So much of joy, infinite joy. Who will give up the infinite joy and come to this world full of so much of suffering? Can you imagine what is infinite joy? So once it is not that the body will drop off, but you don't want to come back. When you merge in that samadhi, if you stay more than 21 days, you will not come back. Everything will drop off by itself. Ordinary people like us. But because Ramakrishna had to do so many good to the world, so much of things had to be done. So exactly at that time when Sri Ramakrishna sat in samadhi for 6 months, just in one posture, a sadhu, a monk came there who could understand by his yogic knowledge, yogic strength, that this body, this person is going to do a lot of good to the humanity. So he stayed there, took care of that body, did everything so that the body will not die. And then after 6 months, Sri Ramakrishna came back and that monk went away. So then we see Ramakrishna was there, and whatever we have learned and all the things we see of Sri Ramakrishna. So we have gone through that, how Sri Ramakrishna got sannyasa, all those mantras, so many other mantras were there, because explaining that will take a lot of time. I'll do that tomorrow and then go forward. We'll go back a little, take up all those mantras, read the meaning. If possible, I'll try to bring that recording of that Taittiriya Mahanarayana Virajahoma mantra chanted by the Chilakere brothers. And if the Lord permits or the technology permits, we will make to hear that chanting. So today we will stop the discussion here. And it's time for question and answer. It is time for any doubts, clearing of the doubts. If you have any doubts, if you have any questions, you can ask now.
Thank you, Swamiji. Colin Chetty, Swamiji.
Colin Chetty ji, please tell.
Oh, what a wonderful place you've taken us, Swamiji.
Yeah. That's our real abode. All of us, every one of us, that is the real abode. We have come here for a few days to enjoy this hog plum or this small world. That's our real place.
Yeah, yes, Swamiji. It's a great feeling.
Yeah. That's true.
Maharaj, Madhu here.
Yes, Madhu, please tell.
I have a couple of questions, Maharaj, if you permit.
Please, why not? When I have stopped you, you have all the rights to ask questions. Please ask.
Yep. The first question is, Maharaj, is the rise and fall of the religion is also cyclic? Like the way you said, the time is cyclic.
A little slowly, because that sound I can't hear it properly. Please repeat it again slowly.
The question is the rise and fall of any religion is also cyclic, the way the time is cyclic, because we see our religion has also gone to some heights and again it has fallen again. So as Swami Vivekananda ji said, it is again going to rise. The Hindu religion will rise again.
It has not completely fallen down. It is still there in spite of it looked like something it has fallen down. It is eternal and universal religion. It is based on universal truth. So it cannot fall. It cannot completely. It looked like it has fallen down. It went down because people tried to subjugate it and destroy it. But it survived. It is surviving and it will rejuvenate itself and come back.
Okay, Maharaj. And
Yeah.
second question is Maya greater than Brahman? Because if it can do the impossible possible, if Maya has that power, is it powerful? Is it more powerful than Brahman itself, so that it can hide the power of?
You should know what is Maya. If you know what is Maya, then you will not get this question, because Maya is nothing but the power of Brahman. Just like the fire and its burning power. It is your power. You are Parabrahma Swarupa. So you ever desire your power, with your power, you wanted to come to this earth, enjoy this, because you are always staying in Samadhi. So much of joy. So, see, if you are always in joy, you will feel a little bored, isn't it? You want to go and enjoy, go do some this thing, get into some adventures, put yourself into problem, break your bones. That you call adventure. Get little suffering, then you can compare it. So just for sports, you yourself came down, and now you are caught up in this world. So with the help of the Guru, you will get the knowledge and break it and go back to your real state. So Maya is not something powerful than Brahman or something. It is the power of Brahman. Just like the fire has the burning power, the water has the wetting power. So can you separate them? Can you think of fire without its burning power?
No, Maharaj.
Yeah, Maya is also like that.
Yeah, and the last question is, Maharaj, and when Ramakrishna was not able to cross that last hurdle of form, and then you gave the example of he took the knowledge as the sword.
Yeah.
And so what is that knowledge? And did Universal Mother allowed him to cross that last hurdle? Was that the knowledge?
She only did all this arrangement, isn't it? She only bought Totapuri there. And when Ramakrishna went there to ask permission, then Mother told him, it is for you alone I have bought this Totapuri. Go and have the knowledge. So that's why Shankaracharya explains Mokshadvara Kapata Patanakari while explaining about Annapurna Stotra of Kashi, in Kashi, that which he has written, Annapurna Stotra, in that Mokshadvara, the door to liberation, the lock and key is in the hands of Divine Mother. If she unlocks only, you can go there. So that's why Shankaracharya tells the great Advaitin, Mokshadvara Kapata Patanakari. The latch, the lock and key is in the hands of Divine Mother. She permitted, so he could come, could break that form itself, which is the last thing, the name and the form. That also he could break with the knowledge of Parabrahma, knowledge of your identity with God. We are dealing that in Bhagavad Gita. What is that knowledge of Atman? In the yesterday, it was Saturday, we are dealing with the second chapter, knowledge, the yoga of knowledge, Gnana Yoga. In that, Krishna explains what is this knowledge. So having that knowledge, with the help of that knowledge, making that itself as a sword, you break that name and form and merge in that. That's all.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, Madhusudan.
Namaste, Maharaj.
Namaste. Shantanu, please tell.
I have a question. So, Totapuri was on the path of Gnana Marga, right? God without form and without. So then, what does the mantra signify here? Like when he says Hari Om, like what is the significance of the word Hari there? Like
was to bring down the mind of Sri Ramakrishna, which was merged in that Samadhi. You cannot bring him down so easily. So by the name of the Lord with form, attraction of that, just like Ramakrishna used to have some little desires, like I will eat jalebi, I will drink water, I'll do that. So only if you used to go while going to samadhi, you will have this desire, you could bring his mind down. Otherwise, it is so immense bliss, you cannot come down back. So
Okay.
with this mantra, the Guru tried to pull down the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. Then he took the name of Hari Om. But all the other sannyasa mantras will take you to that higher state, breaking all these bondages. Viraja
Okay.
mantra.
So in general, like these mantras do have a meaning even in the path of Gnana Marga or like the Brahman. Okay.
The words are nothing but it is power, isn't it? The words and the sounds are nothing but it has come from Om. They are power. They are the power of the Akasha.
Okay, man.
Yeah, sound power. It is not sound is nothing but not just noise. It is power.
Thank you, man.
Okay. Any other questions? I think most of you are now merged in samadhi, so you don't have questions, I think. So somebody has to repeat Hari Om to bring you down from samadhi. Okay? If you don't have any other questions, if you don't have any other doubts, I will close the session with the mantra. Om Priyatam Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Prenite Prenitam Jagat Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Arpanamastu.